From being worshipped for his performance on the court to being shunned for his sleazy tactics at a club, here's the story of Ja Morant's downfall and why he needs to retire. Well, the man and his team started at the top of most people's lists. There's no doubt that the Memphis Grizzlies guard is super skilled. His moves are simply electrifying and make him extremely entertaining to watch. He also belongs to a team that up until 2 years ago was a team of lovable, scrappy underdogs everyone was rooting for. They had all the bravado of a team that had accomplished huge wins in their sporting careers. One of the best fake-it-till-you-make-it stories out there. The story's different now. The talented team led by Morant has become a pretty unlikable, mouthy bunch of men. Sure, you could say that's because feelings of players change as perceptions of their respective teams change. It typically has to do with an ebb and flow of wins and losses. But it's not always all that straightforward. Sometimes too much praise can fuel positive sentiments toward negative ones, all while the professed villains continue to soak up the love. This season, the Grizzlies have chosen to focus on the latter, and it's backfired majorly for them. They've gone from simply playing hard to a team whose shenanigans have started to completely overshadow their talent. A lot of their on-court nonsense is disguised as grit and grind, so much so that national television saw them toe the line with a retired NFL player just before the game's halftime. And it was all courtside and had quite a bit to do with Morant himself. But I won't say all of it has to do with just him. The characters around him are actively contributing to his downfall. Let's revisit what I said about the Grizzlies picking a fight with that retired NBA player. The player was none other than Shannon Sharpe. As the dust-up played out, it was essentially the actions of Morant's father, T. Morant, that escalated things. He was the one who approached the former tight end. Fast forward to 5 games later, and Father Morant and players from the Indiana Pacers were engaged in a chirping match. And that eventually led to tension way beyond the court as well. For T, he seems to really revel in the toxic NBA lifestyle of trash talking and then kissing and making up later. I think he probably knows that his altercations aren't really serious enough to go further. But then in some cases, his instigations leave his son as the recipient of the consequences. At this point, the younger Morant needs to realize that he's worked way too hard to place his career in a position like this. Because of the people around him, he's ended up in a pickle more than just a handful of times. He's had a long list of allegations against him, ranging from assault to threats with guns to being in a car flashing red beams at buses. Add online threats and flashing a gun at a club while on Instagram Live to that list, and you'll understand why people want young Morant to step away from the game. Fortunately for him, though, he's been granted the opportunity for atonement for his mistakes. That's most often the case in sports. Players are given several opportunities to improve before they're finally pushed out of the league, especially when perpetual excuses keep overriding accountability. That's been the case for Morant for a while. That is, until he released a statement taking responsibility for his latest actions. What actions, you ask? Nothing big, just waving around a gun hours after his team lost a game. Morant came under investigation by Colorado police and the NBA for displaying a gun during an Instagram Live video on March 4th. He was reportedly at Shotgun Willie's, a gentleman's club at the time. For those who aren't familiar with what that is, it's a strip club, simply put. And Morant dropped way more than just dimes there. He blew over $50,000 in tips and then just 48 hours later flashed a gun while still on what people are now calling Morant's gun-toting booty bender. When pictures of the incident came out, everyone saw the NBA star drooling over a G-string clad brunette. Almost every inch of the surface of the VIP room was covered in ash, literally a whole pile. "You'd need a rake," said one club insider who witnessed the scene up close. At the club, the Grizzly paid for 4 more dancers and bottle service, as well as a ton of food. It was all fun and games until he pulled out a gun and terrified all the girls in the back room. Police went over security footage from the club from that night, but claimed that there wasn't enough evidence to charge him with a crime.
After I made a, terrible mistake, being inside a club and, went live, I put myself in, a bad position. And also it's, my daughter.
but the Instagram live stream was already out. There was a public firestorm, and understandably so, that's when Morant came out with a public apology to his team as well as the people he scared. Just hours after the whole debacle, the Grizzlies announced that Morant would miss 2 games. That was later extended to include another 4 games, and that's not it. The NBA's gotten involved too. According to the latest news, Morant has stepped away from the team, with no set date for his return. Under Section 9, Article 6 of the CBA, players are prohibited from possessing a firearm of any kind in several settings. Some of those settings include the following. Whenever a player is traveling on any NBA-related business, whether on behalf of the player's team, the NBA, or any league-related entity, Morant may not have been partaking in any team-related activity at the time, but he was still in Glendale as part of the team's road trip, so he was subject to team rules pertaining to personal conduct. As of now, it's at the discretion of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver to determine if Morant violated any clauses, and also whether he's going to be suspended for a definite or indefinite period. This isn't even the first time Morant's gotten into trouble with the law. Just last fall, he got into a physical altercation. He was named a defendant in a lawsuit where he was accused of punching a 17-year-old during an argument, all over a pickup basketball game. At the time, Morant wasn't charged with a crime. Since then, he's maintained that he acted in self-defense. According to the Washington Post, though, the teenager involved claimed that after the fight, Morant actually showed up to his house, and he was carrying a gun back then too. Do we know whether that thing's registered? By the looks of it, there's no confirmation of that just yet. With all this on his record, does he still deserve a place in the NBA? After all the controversies, I don't think he has a very good shot at staying. If it wasn't for the same controversies, he'd have a great shot for an All-NBA team. But since there's a good chance he won't be returning in the regular season, that All-Star NBA selection is going to be pretty difficult. Sure, the guy's still going to receive a lot of money for his services, but he's also going to be suffering a much bigger loss than just the 50 grand he literally threw away in the club. He'll be suffering a massive loss of $39 because of the games he's going to be missing out on. People on Twitter are having a field day with the whole situation. One user on the platform even called Morant's strip club entertainment the most expensive dance in the league's history. They aren't wrong. Maybe it's time for him to take a couple of steps back and just retire his jersey. There doesn't seem to be any recovery from this. And that's all I have for you today on why Ja Morant needs to retire.